Welcome to the chosen ones. Some individuals should have stayed out of it since they didn't know they were bothering a calm person with a fighting spirit. You were the narrative twist from the start. They felt they were in charge of the type of presence that seems innocuous on the outside, quiet, watchful, and not concerned. But there is a level of spiritual knowledge that may change everything without anyone noticing. And the odd part is that they actually thought they were the ones running laps around you. At the same time, you were sitting there like, oh, bless your heart. You have no idea what you're up against. This information matches your life wonderfully. Studies reveal that the people who are most underestimated are frequently the most observant because they spend more time watching than doing. That's why the individuals who believed they knew you are now confused, ashamed, and spiritually drained. They thought you were weak when they stepped into the ring. They left, recognizing they had just fought a spiritual assassin who was pretending to be friendly. You didn't come into rooms loudly or ask for attention. You didn't say how powerful, smart, or able to understand someone's intentions faster than they could finish their phrase you were. People don't think you're as good as you are. You let them assume you didn't know what you were doing. You let people think that being silent means being weak. You let them play their little games, use their prepared plans, and be cunning. You were 3 steps ahead the whole time, stretching and sipping water. Like, are we really doing this? And now they've finally gotten the twist. You weren't confused. You weren't lost. You weren't stupid. You were thinking about things spiritually, instinctively, and energetically. You tricked them without even meaning to. By being yourself, you made people show who they really were. And when the masks came off, the games failed, and their plans fell apart like cheap furniture, they finally saw who you really were. Not the easy target they thought. Not the easy prey they thought it would be, but the one person in the room they should have never misjudged. The spiritual planner, the quiet judge who sees everything but doesn't say anything until it's time to strike with deadly accuracy. That was their biggest mistake. They never thought you were guilty. First, people misconstrued your silence since they didn't realize you were analyzing their souls. People sometimes believe that if you're silent, you don't know what's going on, you're terrified, or you're not in the loop. But in your instance, your quiet was the smartest thing anybody could do while everyone else was attempting to show off. Show off, take charge of talks, or make sly comments to see how you'd respond. You stuck still long enough to find out who they truly were. You weren't silent because you were scared. You were silent because you were gathering the truth. And when you let people show who they really are, the truth always comes out louder. You didn't have to guess what people wanted. You saw how their eyes moved as they lied. You saw how someone's energy changed when they got a compliment. You saw how people spoke when they thought you weren't paying attention. And the strange part is that they really felt you weren't capturing anything. They thought you didn't know since you were calm. But all that meant was that you were storing your strength for the end result. You recognized who envied you long before they tried to disguise it instead of wasting it on their show. You observed who claimed to like you, who secretly competed with you, who mimicked you, who didn't think you were good enough, and who tried to be kind to you without really being loyal. You saw everything from the perimeter of the room like an observer. And they kept displaying their true colors since you didn't say anything or do anything. Your quiet didn't keep them safe. It shows them who they really are. What shocked them the most wasn't that you knew. You knew it quite well. When you eventually took a step back, broke ties, moved in a different way, or made a choice that made them confront themselves, they were shocked. They couldn't believe that you could see straight through what they were doing when they fought so hard to hide it. They never understood that you weren't silent because you weren't paying attention. It was a good thing for you. You weren't aiming to win fights. You were looking at character. You were making plans. You were figuring out how things worked. And by the time they figured out what you really knew, the game was finished since you had already left without saying a word, taking with you all the truths they believed you missed. Second, your ability to tell the difference wasn't based on feelings. It was anatomical. How well you can read. People weren't born sensitive or overly emotional. It came from someplace far deeper and crisper. You don't only notice how others act. You can see the structure underlying it, much like certain individuals can read body language. You read the language of the spirits. You can tell what someone wants just like you can tell what someone is feeling by looking at their face. It's like you've always had this inside scanner that breaks down a person into their real pieces. Even when they act like they're someone they're not. Most people respond to what someone says. You respond to what someone means. And that's why it's always been hard to trick you. You can't be emotionally manipulated since flattery, guilt, or drama don't cloud your judgment. The faux innocence, artificial humility, and well-rehearsed friendliness don't bother you. You can see the structure under all that. The actual reason, the secret longing, and the silent anger. You see the plan, not the paint job. People frequently believed you were too deep or overthinking, not understanding you were picking up on things they didn't even know they were displaying. You aren't paranoid. You can learn a lot about a person by the little things they do, like the tone of their voice that shows their envy, the pause that shows their lie, the extra explanation that shows their remorse, and the abrupt change in energy that tells you their plans altered before they say anything. Your ability to tell right from wrong has saved you more times than you can count. Most of the individuals who didn't believe in you never understood how close they were to getting caught. They assumed you were emotional, but you were thinking in a manner they couldn't comprehend. You weren't responding. You were reading. You weren't making a guess. You were saying yes. You didn't think anything was wrong. You were right. And what startled folks the most was how easily you seemed to know things. They never told you how to look through things. They believed they hid how you might break up with someone before they ever cheated on you. You could tell that their spirit was broken long before their actions showed it. Your discernment wasn't an emotion. It was a truth detector that never stopped functioning. That's why you don't let anything get by you for long. Third, they assumed you were weak until they saw you fight like a human. People like to think they know everything about anything they can't put into a box. They thought you were weak because you stayed cool, stepped back, and didn't get involved in petty drama. They thought you weren't powerful or present since you didn't shout, debate, or compete with them. They didn't know that your restraint wasn't a sign of weakness. It was all about strategy. When fully comprehended, it is always more deadly than blind hostility. People aren't used to the way you fight. You don't become angry and strike out or disrespect the person who attacked you. Instead, you carefully tear apart situations, going for the precise things that keep someone's confidence, plans, or machinations together. Your revenge isn't loud or messy. It's like surgery. It hits the weak spots they didn't even realize were there, leaving them open and disoriented, making them doubt all they thought they had control over. They don't know what's going on until they're already caught up in the results of what they've done. Your approach is beautiful since it's virtually unnoticeable. You don't make things worse. You take away the support that keeps it going. People are scared because they've been taught to defend against threats they can see, not ones they can't see. You act like a force they never saw coming. A presence that watches, figures things out, and acts at just the right time. They were busy attempting to get a reaction out of you, hoping that anger or manipulation may trap you. And all this time you were watching, studying, and waiting. They are shocked when they see what happened after you did anything. No yelling, no drama, and no wasting energy. Only outcomes. Without you saying a word, relationships fall apart, falsehoods come to light, and hidden motives come to light. It hits them like a frigid wave. They were never battling a human. They were up against an intellect, a level of control, and a level of accuracy that don't follow human rules. They believed you were weak. They assumed you weren't dangerous. And that's why they are so scared of you right now. They don't get how you fight. And by the time they try to fight back, they have already been outsmarted, outclassed, and outlasted. For your presence quietly showed their jealousy and decay. Some individuals think that charm, deception, and smart manipulation can mask what's actually inside them. They think they can control how other people see them and that their secrets will stay hidden as long as they keep pretending. But when you enter a room, nothing is hidden. When you're around, individuals seem to be able to hide things for years. You don't have to say anything or face anyone. Just being present makes them tell the truth. And that reality often smells like jealousy, insecurity, and the agony of not getting what you want. They were fine with behaving better than everyone else, feeling that they were above the law, and thinking they could get away with cheating. At the same time, you were taking it all in. Watching the micro-expressions, hearing the small changes in tone, and recognizing the underlying signs of fear or envy that they didn't even know they were displaying. Every fake grin, every over-the-top flattery, and every well-planned compliment was a new experience for you. Evidence of the holes in their armor. While you were silently reading their intents, they were busily running their mosques. People are most afraid that this isn't clear. You don't cause a scene. You don't call people out or point fingers. Your strength comes from being calm and watching quietly. People fear when they see their own inner rot because no one else is bringing it out. They assumed they were secure and that their jealousy or dishonesty was not obvious. But your enthusiasm makes it difficult to be subtle. They can't hide from themselves and their shortcomings are more obvious while you're there. This makes them despise you in silence even if they attempt to be calm. They don't recognize it until it's too late. Their false sense of superiority falls apart, their confidence wavers, and they start to doubt every action they make. You didn't say a word about any of this. You just lived in a way that made them have to be real, and the jealousy, bitterness, and hidden rot they were carrying spilled out on their own. That's why they are more scared of you being there than of having to face you. You don't tell them. You tell them the truth that they believe they could hide. And that truth is a lot more deadly than any conflict. You were never outnumbered, number 5. They were outsmarted. People like to think that numbers offer them strength. They believe that a group can overpower one person. That a lot of noise and many points of view may drown out a calm observer. They think you were weak because you were alone or outnumbered. They didn't know that the magnitude of your support doesn't make you strong. It stems from how well you comprehend. They depended on numbers, but you depended on quality, and that made all the difference. You could see what they were going to do next, and who they were going to work with since you weren't reacting emotionally. You weren't trying to catch up with their games. You were watching, figuring things out, and predicting what would happen. You didn't need extra people to help you since your understanding was like a shield and your timing was like a weapon. You didn't need to cause trouble to win. You needed to be clear. And that was always on your side. They thought you were less powerful because they thought power was the same as loudness. They assumed that being louder, more visible, and more linked made them stronger. They didn't think that knowledge, patience, and judgment could entirely take away their advantage while they were busy attempting to amaze, trick, or scare people. You were discreetly mapping the area, getting to know each person's mind, and knowing just where to step, when to move, and how to get out of the way without losing control. The best thing about being outsmarted is that they don't realize what struck them until it's too late. They thought they were in command, but you were really in charge from the shadows. You made their numbers into noise, their connections into confusion, and their faith into doubt. They never actually had power. They were playing on a board where every move had previously been planned. Every plan was thought out, and every flaw was taken into consideration. When they finally figured out what was going on, it was clear that the apparent crowd advantage didn't matter. The game was never about size, therefore you were never outnumbered. It was about planning ahead, seeing things clearly, and having the patience to let them show themselves. Ultimately, they were vanquished by an unforeseen circumstance. Your brain? 6. You didn't tell them because you wanted to keep the peace. Not because you couldn't do anything. A lot of people assume that being quiet means being weak. But for you, that was the best way to control. You could have shown everyone the truth behind every falsehood, every hidden motive, and every deception. They sought to get away. But you didn't. Not because you didn't have the power, but because it wasn't essential to show them. You weren't in a hurry to make a point or win. You understood that telling the truth too soon frequently offers individuals a chance to protect themselves, change the story, or get well before the full effects strike. Your actual weapon was patience, not impulse. You saw them quietly let their genuine selves show through. Their plans, their jealousy, and their lies. They couldn't even stop everything from coming out. You didn't have to step in because people instinctively show who they are when they believe no one is watching. They thought you were passive, but they didn't know that you were painstakingly figuring out when the truth would have the maximum effect with no more work on your part. This is where you truly demonstrate your strength. You opted to be calm instead of crazy. You let people lie, cheat, and manipulate while you stayed honest and calm. You didn't need to yell or blame them. The fact that you could stand back and allow the natural consequences of their behavior happen was worse than any attack you could have made. Their own actions had effectively confined them, and you were only a spectator. The quiet power that made sure the truth got to where it needed to go. It was too late by the time they figured out what had happened. Your restraint had been a revelation. Your patience had turned into proof, and their exposure had become impossible to deny. They never thought that someone who seemed so serene and distant could be so strong when they were motionless. You weren't weak. They couldn't understand how you were untouchable. Every lie they said, every secret they tried to keep, and every trick they tried to pull broke apart on its own. You didn't have to do anything. And that's why your quiet hurt more than any fight ever could. 7. You had a mirror with you. They thought it was innocent. People thought you were naive, but you weren't dangerous. That your friendliness made it simple for people to hurt you. They didn't see what was real. You were holding a mirror that showed them precisely who they were. Their goals, their falsehoods, and their flaws. And they had no clue. They felt they could test you, control you, or cross lines without any problems. They had no idea that everything they did was being quietly recorded, studied, and sent back to them. Your so-called innocence wasn't being naive. It was a plan. You let others think they were smarter or better than you, and you silently watched how far they were ready to go to acquire what they desired. You could see every little lie, every attempt to trick you, and every manipulation they believed was hidden. And when the mirror finally showed them what they had done, they were shocked. They couldn't believe that someone who seemed so calm, collected, and gentle had witnessed everything. This mirror you have with you didn't only show your intentions. It showed what kind of person you are. People figured out too late that their own energy, jealousy, and secret intentions were suddenly out in the open. They thought they were testing you and seeing how far you could go when they walked into the room. But in truth, they were being judged themselves. There was no denying every shortcoming, falsehood, and weakness. And they couldn't disguise it at all. The best thing about your method is that it isn't obvious until it's too late. You don't have to call somebody out or face them. You don't have to make things worse or add to the drama. The mirror works by itself because it shows the truth, and the truth hurts more than anything else when it comes out of nowhere. They didn't think you were as good as you are since they just viewed the surface. They thought you were innocent because you were quiet. Your compassion for frailty and your observation for ignorance. But in truth, you were always in charge. You held up the mirror and let them kill themselves without doing anything. They were already exposed, humbled, and powerless to disagree with the mirror they never wanted to see by the time they figured it out. Your spirit has a way of bringing out the demons that others try to hide. People have always had this strange effect on you that makes them squirm in ways they can't understand. It's not what you say, what you do, or even what you are in the normal sense. It's something more profound, something that gives out energy. Your soul interacts with theirs in a way that brings out hidden facts, rage that has been kept inside, and jealousy that has been buried for a long time. People around you don't merely feel bad. They feel open in ways they never thought they would. They didn't know that the parts of themselves they've been embarrassed of or attempting to control can't handle your intensity. This isn't about scaring or tricking someone. You don't have to make people angry on purpose. Your energy is just there when you are clear, honest, and aligned, and it works like a catalyst. People who are used to masking their fears or living behind masks suddenly find those masks loosening. They start to be angry, jealous, or aggressive for no cause. But you know why devils are reacting to you? Your energy doesn't allow for lies. This is much more potent because you aren't doing it on purpose. You don't want to make anyone angry. You're just being yourself. Real and unbreakable. Look and align. That realness comes through like a flashlight, and those who are dark within can't bear it. They show who they are without meaning to. Their falsehoods, manipulations, and anxieties start to come to light on their own. Like your energy force is the truth that comes out. And the greatest thing is, people don't know why it's going on. They can't quite put their finger on it. They merely feel uneasy, annoyed, or even afraid while they're around you. That uncertainty and quiet terror is what gives you the upper hand. As others deal with their own problems, you stay safe, unaffected, and in charge. They never thought that just being there might show what they've tried so hard to keep secret. They won't be able to do anything about it until it's too late. There are already signs of secrets, flaws, and hidden motives. And they can't do anything to hide them. Number 9, don't hurt others. You assault patterns. People are afraid of you not because you yell or hit them. You perceive the underlying structure beneath their acts, the patterns that repeat. They don't even know who they are. You don't waste energy on drama or conflict that isn't real. While they are preoccupied dealing with small problems, you focus on the pattern, the behavior, the manipulation, and the lies that keep happening. You are breaking down the system that makes those fights possible in the first place. That's why it feels like you're a threat. They can't tell. They don't know that they aren't being assaulted individually. They're being taken apart piece by piece. You see habits, patterns, and decisions that everyone else misses. If someone lies, manipulates, or plots all the time, you're not just focused on one time they did it. You keep an eye on the pattern, figure out the path it takes, and find the weak spots that keep it going. That's why your motions are so exact, almost like surgery. People may try to blame you for what happened to them, but in fact they are just facing the results of their own repeated acts. You didn't hit randomly. You hit the spot where the cycle would have to break. You don't waste energy on emotional turmoil since you can attack patterns instead of people. You let go of your ego, pride, and need for retribution. You don't get caught up in the mess that other people make because you always see the greater picture. If someone keeps trying to control or manipulate you, stop the mechanism that lets them do so. You discreetly take away the base of their power without their knowing until it's too late. That's what makes you so scary good at what you do. People can't guess what you're going to do next since you're not playing the same game. They assume they can outwit or challenge the person they're talking to. But you're working on a level that they can't see. You're not battling people. You fix equations, figure out sequences, and point out patterns that no one else has the time or understanding to deal with. They think the collapse happens all at once, but it's really the consequence of patient study, deliberate patience, and comprehending the patterns they never recognized. They couldn't get out of number 10. You outsmarted them without ever having to fight them. People traditionally thought that to win you had to battle, argue, or prove yourself in their area. They felt that the only way to judge how strong or smart someone was to match them up. Move to deal with their disarray or to join in their games. What they never got is that you work on a whole different level. You don't compete with others since competition means that everyone is equal. And they were never on your level in the first place. While they were working hard to trap you or change the outcome, you were simply watching, thinking, and moving without becoming involved in their game. The best thing about your method is that it's not obvious. They believed they were testing you by pushing your limits and seeing how you would respond, but in truth, you were watching them fall apart. Every lie they said, every plan they made, and every time they tried to scare or irritate you let you learn more about how they worked. You didn't need to say anything since what they did told you all you needed to know. It wasn't a reaction by the time you did something. It was bound to happen. You didn't simply remain ahead. You thought they would be redirected to neutralized without knowing how far behind they were. People are surprised because they think someone who is a threat will make noise, fight, and cause trouble. They didn't realize that you don't need turmoil to win, but you do need peace. They happen in ways that make them doubt all they thought they understood, leaving them confused, humbled, and utterly open. They never saw it coming since you weren't on the same level as them. By not getting involved in their fights, not validating their games, and watching them tactically, you rendered their efforts meaningless. They couldn't even see what you were doing. They wore themselves out while you saved your energy, clarity, and focus. When the final result came out, they couldn't believe they had been outsmarted without even having a fight. Your intelligence wasn't loud, it didn't respond, and it wasn't easy for people to guess. That's why you can't be touched. People don't understand you, and you're well ahead of everyone else attempting to catch up. They couldn't beat you since you don't need other people's approval to do things. One reason individuals couldn't touch, control, or influence you is easy. You don't need approval, attention, or acknowledgement to execute your job. Most people judge their value by how others view them, but you judge yourself by truth, purpose, and alignment. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, and that makes you invincible. People who use ego, envy, or manipulation to get control over others can't compete with someone who doesn't require affirmation since their regular ways of getting what they want don't work on you. They didn't realize how strong someone is who can do things without needing other people's approval. They were trying to get you to react. Test your tolerance or play with your feelings, hoping to make you feel insecure or unsure. But you were guided by an internal compass that never changes, doesn't bend to what other people want, and doesn't let criticism or praise get in the way. You weren't defensive or reactive since what they said or did couldn't influence how you felt about yourself or how you lived your life. This self-sufficiency isn't being cocky. It's clear. You don't need anyone's permission to live, act, or go for what you want. That clarity is both scary and attractive. At the same moment, people feel weak because they know they can't change you. They keep trying to manipulate, scare, or control others, but they always fail, which makes them angry, confused, and irritated. They know how to get what they want from those who want attention, adoration, or acceptance. But you don't. You work completely outside of their system. And the best thing is that your independence lets you move without thinking, hit with accuracy, and pull back without giving a reason. You can stay away from toxic people, avoid traps, and let the repercussions happen on their own since you don't need others to agree with your choices or value you. They think it's easy, but it's based on a profound, unshakable grasp of who you are. That's why they couldn't beat you. Not because you battled harder or louder, but because you don't need them to work. And no matter what they do, that basic reality will never alter. They never knew you were testing them the whole time. Most individuals think they are in charge and can test others, push their limits, and see how they react. They thought you didn't know, were passive, or were ignorant, and that every encounter was merely casual, innocuous, or unimportant. They had no idea that you were silently watching, thinking about, and judging everything they did. Every word they spoke, every move they did, and every little trick they used to go ahead. You were taking it all in, putting it away and studying it like someone who doesn't need a conflict to figure out what's true. You weren't responding on impulse because you didn't want to fight. It was a revelation. You let people exhibit themselves without getting in the way. There are lies, jealousy, manipulation, and pretending that became the proof you needed by letting them do what they wanted. You showed them patterns and motives that they believed were concealed. Every small mistake, every suggestion, and every attempt to control you confirmed what you already thought. They never understood that their actions were the examinations and that your quiet observation was the final exam. They couldn't understand how powerful this made you. They thought they could read you, figure you out, and see how far you could go. But in actual life, the roles were switched. You were monitoring how they acted when they thought no one was looking. You learned who they could trust, who they would betray, who was petty, and who was really devoted. You were gently and painstakingly mapping their character without having to react right away. And when the results of your tests eventually came out, when their plans fell apart, falsehoods were exposed, or they crossed the line one too many times, they were stunned. They had been the ones being looked at the whole time, and they had failed without even knowing it. Because you were patient and delicate, they were able to show themselves organically, and the repercussions were ideal because you never had to step in directly. They believed they were in charge of the game, but really they were answering your questions without saying a word. That's why your intelligence, patience, and quiet approach always placed you a few steps ahead of anyone who didn't give you enough credit. Number. You don't hit first. You hit the last shot. The folks who didn't believe in you always thought that doing anything meant having power. That being the first to act or attack shows power. They never got that timing is more deadly than speed and that patience is stronger than aggressiveness. You don't hurry to answer. You don't get into battles, disputes, or disagreements only to make a point. You watch instead. You figure it out. And you wait. You let people waste time, make errors, and show who they really are before you do anything. By the time you hit it, it's definitive, exact, and can't be changed. And that's what scares them. Your strength comes from holding back. You think about every word, every gesture, and every choice you make, whereas most people are rushed, reactive, and short-sighted. You can see the whole pattern of conduct and the effects that will happen as a result. You let things happen as they should, and people often hurt themselves without even knowing it. They believe they are in charge. But their mistakes simply make it clearer what your last move should be. It's not about showing who's in charge right now. It's about making sure that truth and balance are upheld in a way that can't be denied. When you eventually do something, it's not because you feel like it or are angry. It's a surgery. It breaks down lies, reveals hidden agendas, and ends stories that have been open for too long. People are shocked by what happened since they never saw it coming. They were too preoccupied thinking you were passive or sluggish to act. They thought your patience were weak while they weren't. But they didn't realize that the timing of your choices makes them have a bigger effect. Your attack isn't simply an action. It's the result of everything they said when they thought you were observing calmly. People are afraid of you not because you fight louder or quicker, but because when you do anything, it's definitive. There is no second opportunity, no need for an explanation, and no room for bargaining. Your last strike makes them happy with the outcome, and they have to deal with the full weight of what they did. It's too late by the time they get it. You were never in a hurry. Never in a hurry and never out of control. You just wait, watch, and then hit with an inevitability. They can't get away. Number. The true shock was that you were never the one who was hurt. You were the judge who was concealed. People usually thought you were weak if you didn't say anything, took insults, or allowed other people control things. They thought they could get you to do what they wanted. Try to see how patient you are or take advantage of how soft you seem. They didn't know that although they thought they were in charge, you were quietly watching, waiting, and assessing everything they said and did. You weren't just a bystander in their games. You were the unseen authority silently judging if they were worthy of your life, your trust, and your energy. Every time they tried to hurt you, it became proof in the case you were already working on. You weren't reacting because you didn't need to be. People saw their falsehoods, jealousy, manipulations, and greed. They were put in order. You were silently looking for trends, checking character, and keeping track of conduct. You weren't ready to fight back. You were waiting for them to show themselves completely so that your choices would be based on facts that couldn't be denied. In other words, you let them fail on their own. And that failure was louder than any fight could possibly be. The for them comes from realizing that all they believed they were doing to you was pointless. They thought they were in charge because they acted first, shouted louder, or moved quicker. But they never had the power. It was always yours, concealed in patience, judgment, and clear thinking. When people ultimately see the result, the limits you set are the results of their own actions. The lack of you, your vitality in their life. They are shocked. They thought there would be a victim. They got a judge. You didn't have to yell, fight for your position, or defend yourself since your judgment wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about safeguarding your honesty, being honest with yourself, and allowing things happen as they naturally would. They didn't realize how deeply you understood, how carefully you waited, and how quietly you made decisions. The true shock is that they never won and you were never their prey. You were the secret judge. And that news hurts them more than they could have ever imagined. Everything we've spoken about here shows a fact that most people will never completely comprehend. It's not a weakness to be underestimated. It's a gun. You have quietly gone through problems with strength, accuracy, and patience that others couldn't see. You've seen, thought about, and figured out people's motives, patterns, and hidden intentions in ways that make it impossible for people not to notice you. You didn't have to do anything. Fight or argue to show your strength, since your strength has always been in your capacity to stay cool, steady, and unwavering while letting individuals show who they are. From quietly examining souls to revealing underlying jealousy. From taking things apart instead of hitting people. Not first but last. Your journey has been one of calm mastery. You've been the secret strategist, the person who transforms manipulation into proof. The calm power that makes disorder fall apart on its own. People believe they could have fun. You challenge yourself or don't give yourself enough credit. But every time they made a choice, they had to deal with the repercussions while you stood by. Calm, patient, and not worried. You were never a victim. You were never weak. You were always in charge. Seeing clearly, acting on purpose, and doing things perfectly when the time called for it. It's not simply about being one step ahead. It's about knowing how strong you are and how smart your plan is. It's about realizing that being quiet, patient, discerning, and in line with others are not marks of weakness, but signs of unwavering strength. People who didn't believe in you, thought you were less than you are, or sought to control you are now facing the reality. They never knew who you really were. You were the secret judge, the quiet watcher, the power they couldn't see. And that's what makes you so memorable. Unstoppable and unavoidable. If this made sense to you and helped you see the deeper realities of your power, remain in touch. Sign up for the channel so you don't miss any of these insights. Click the like button. Show that your energy is in line with the truth. Leave a comment to tell your story because it matters. And don't forget to forward this video around. People need to see the power of the invisible, the silent, and the remarkable. Keep strong, keep attentive, and remember that your quiet has always been louder than that cacophony. May God bless you.